Welcome to today's episode of Financial Fluency. Today I am here with Hilary Silver, relationship expert and master empowerment coach. Hi, Hilary. Thanks for joining me.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited we made this work. We both kind of moved a few things and scrambled, but here we are.
Here we are.
So tell me about being a master empowerment coach and a relationship expert. What is that like?
Well, it's just, I think I have the best job in the whole world. So, my business for the last 15 years has been counseling, actually. I started as a local brick and mortar private practice therapist, helping one person in the privacy of my office at a time. And about 2 years ago, I just started to feel really isolated. And I was repeating myself with people. And I knew that if they all could hear what I hear every day, they wouldn't feel so alone in what they're struggling with, because they were all feeling bad about what their issues were, but feeling worse about it because they felt alone. So I just felt this passion to figure out a way to get my message out to the masses. And so I took my business online. I switched away from being a counseling professional and a therapist to a coach so that I could serve more people at once. And so that's what I've been doing. And so I've actually been quite surprised at how receptive people are to talking about this kind of information and in an online space, but it's working and I love it.
Well, I think all of us are getting more and more used to sharing more of ourselves and our lives publicly and online all the time. It's so interesting for kids growing up with this level of openness.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah. And we are, and I think live video has helped with that a lot. We want to connect, and we don't want to connect in a shallow way on social media. We want realness. We want that. So I did a talk a couple of years ago called Transparent is the New Black. And it's really about how that's really what we are demanding from people in our lives, in our personal relationships and in our professional relationships. I just believe that.
That is interesting. Yeah, and it does seem like the old sort of corporate speak, advertise, that stuff's not hitting anymore with people. People do really prefer to see real people doing real things, I feel like.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I love about my own brand, if I don't say so myself, is part of what I share is that I know all this stuff as an expert and a couples therapist and a relationship person, but I'm human. And this stuff is hard for all of us. And so I'm really clear and transparent that I'm in this journey together. And I too have to work on my relationship every day. And sometimes it's not good, doesn't go well. And if my husband and I take our eye off the ball and stop taking care of our relationship for a period of time, we struggle just like everyone else. So that's kind of the hook with my brand and my core values as a provider and as a public figure is that I don't have it all together either. And I like sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody really does, do they? It's all sort of curated. So how do you see the link between relationships and empowerment in your own work?
Oh, that's a great question. So I feel like you cannot have what you want in your life or in your relationships if you don't know what that is and you don't know how to go after it and get it. So a lot of the people that I work with are in relationships or they're in their life and they just feel like they've been in the back seat and they're not clear about what they want. So they just go along for the ride and they let someone else do the driving, mainly their primary love partner. And then they wake up and they realize that they're at a destination they never really wanted to be. Or in, relationships with colleagues or collaborative partners that they have where they're kind of not speaking up for themselves. And so they end up agreeing to do things they don't want to do. They end up in places that they don't want to be. And that's all about empowerment, feeling clear about who you are and what you think and feel and need and want, and having the confidence and feeling empowered enough to put it out there so that you can get what it is that you want. You can accurately represent yourself in the world.
That's a good point. As you were saying that, I thought of something that my mom and my sister and I have talked about a lot. And I've always kind of thought of this as like a familial thing in my mom's family, where my grandmother, the matriarch, in a way, was so philanthropic and a martyr and sacrificed and did everything for everyone else. And I know my mom's talked about this too. And being a mom myself, there are periods of time where I feel like if someone asks what I want, which doesn't always happen a lot, I'm just like, I have no idea. Sleep?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I know my mom has struggled with that a lot in her life too, because she's always been a very service-oriented person. Do you find this across a lot of women? I'm thinking particularly moms who do so much for, or caregivers, or like, how common is this feeling of like, I don't actually know what I want?
It's actually really common. And for you, it sounds like this intergenerational pattern of relating. And you all have to know that no one wants you to do something that you don't want to do. And when someone asks you what you want, they are expecting the truth. No one wants to be lied to. And so
just whatever you want, right?
Right. It feels
whatever
terrible.
Everybody else wants. I don't know.
Because then you end up resentful and you end up disappearing from your life, and you can't really have real connection in your relationships because you're not sharing who you really are and what you really think or feel or need or want with the people that are asking this of you. And so that's where the empowerment comes in. And I don't think that it's mostly women. I think women do this a lot, but it's more a personality thing. And I think it's derived from learning from our families of origin, or feeling that we don't feel like we can handle conflict. It's a people-pleasing behavior. It's wanting to be liked. It's not feeling good enough as you are. It's it's learning that you're here to serve others instead of to live the life that you are meant to live for yourself. That's what it's all about underneath it all.
That all sounds good.
I'll
make sure my mom listens to this one.
Please do. I'm very, very passionate about it because we aren't here to live somebody else's life. We're here to live our own.
So how do you help people do that?
Well, I have a series of exercises and processes that I do and systems that I have where I walk my clients through that, whether they're working with me privately or in one of my women's groups that I run, or in the membership that I have where they get little doses of it. There's clarity exercises, there's exercises where we're actually walking through the process of self-discovery, and then we start talking about how to speak that in the world in a way that's not going to alienate you, because some people do a 180. They don't say anything, and then they say so much that they kind of burn bridges and they become really brittle. So the idea is to flex those muscles enough, but to learn how to communicate effectively and to do it in a way that you're drawing people to you instead of cutting off those relationships, which is what everybody's afraid of and why they act this way in the beginning in the first place. So it's a system that I have, really.
Are there any starter tips that you could share here so that if someone's curious but is not sure, okay, a relationship and empowerment coach, is this what I need or not? Are there some things they could try out?
Well, and if I'm hitting a hot button with somebody who's listening right now and you're feeling like I am resentful a lot of the time, I do feel like everybody else comes first. Wait a minute, I'm doing things a lot of the time that I don't want to be doing and I'm grumbling about it. Then one of my favorite things to say is if you're feeling resentful, it's because you haven't said something you want to say, you're doing something you don't want to do, or you're not doing something that you do want to do, and that it's actually on you. It's your responsibility. And that's good because then you can change that. And so, that's where I'm kind of known for telling it like it is. It's like a tough love. I love helping and I'm not judging, but I want to light a fire under you and get you motivated to see that you don't have to live this way. So the first step is to identify whether or not this is you. And if you feel stuck in a corner, if you feel boxed in, if you feel like you come last in your life, that's really something that you are responsible for doing to yourself. And so that's the very, very first step.
Just to recognize it?
Yeah, to recognize that this is something that you are experiencing and that you can change it easily. Actually, it doesn't take that long once you figure it out. And a lot of times the first question I get is, I've been living for so many other people in my life, I actually don't even really know who I am, and that kind of causes panic sometimes. But really, you've been there all along. You're just not listening. And so that's where it really gets fun, is that I have exercises, for example, and it sounds really, sounds over basic, but really to observe yourself in situations is because you want to know where you're doing this and with who you do this. And so our emotions are the greatest source of information for us about who we are. So watch TV, watch the news, watch politics. There's nothing like politics to get us kind of in tune with that stuff, with our emotional experience. When you're watching movies, when you're watching commercials, when you're observing the world around you and you're seeing people interacting, what moves you, what makes you cry, what makes you feel like your heart fill up, what pisses you off and fires you up, like that is good information for you about who you are, what's important to you, where your values are. And that is a great place to start tuning in.
Oh boy. I was running myself through that as you were doing it. And I recently in April, I went off antidepressants after being on them for a few years. I'm a special needs mom. I don't get a lot of sleep. We have a lot of stress. And I decided that I didn't want to stay on them long term. I've been on them for a couple of years. And the really interesting thing that's been coming up is I forgot that I'm a crier because on antidepressants, like, sure, I still had highs and lows. It wasn't like, I didn't feel anything, but commercials didn't make me cry. And since going off them, they do, especially father-daughter ones, which
how do you feel about that? How do you feel about being now open to the vast experience of your emotional world? How is that for you?
It's interesting. It is interesting. And I did try it a year before and some really stressful things came up and I went back on because I felt like anxiety and panic attacks and things. And I have like a very mixed past myself. Like I grew up in a domestic violence situation and I was abused. So I definitely have triggers for things of my own that are kind of different from people who don't have those. But yeah, just like the sappy commercials, like the silly things, the sad things, the things with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dogs and little girls and dads, things like that.
Yeah. But so can you see there's information there for you about your journey and your sensitivities and your experiences growing up? Maybe you need to spend some more time. I don't know if you've done this and this is your show and I'm not doing therapy on you. I don't mean to sound like that, but this is, for the purpose of your listeners who might have a similar experience, is that that's your truth. And there's power in that right there. And that, what you do with your story, we can't help the situation we're born into, and we're not responsible for so many of the things that happen to us as we're growing up along the way. But we don't have to feel that is something that holds us back. That can be something that becomes our power. And you have to do your healing and your grieving for what you didn't get, and then turn that into something that feels empowering for you.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so after we watch what makes us cry, what we get really excited about, do you have people do you recommend they write it down, journal it, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, I missed that.
What do we do next after we observe ourselves for a bit?
Well, I mean, it never ends. I'm still observing myself, and I feel like I've gone through this for a long, long time. So I'm always kind of curious about my reaction to things. That's important, is to really turn to the feelings instead of away. And so what happens for many people is those feelings that you were saying about crying at a commercial or being overwhelmed by real life stresses. You have trauma in your past and you are dealing with, a really challenging situation right now. It's hard enough being a parent with children who are healthy, but those who have special needs, oh my God, or being a single parent, like I can't even imagine what that would be like. So those are very real stresses, but your feelings are real and valid. And so instead of turning away from them and eating to comfort yourself or drinking too much or stuffing that away and then experiencing anxiety later and panic attacks later, we need to feel those feelings and give ourselves the validation and acknowledgement that we need to feel like we are okay, to be your own best friend, to comfort yourself the way you would want the most loving, nurturing, comforting best friend or mother to do for you. We have to do that for ourselves and say, there's a reason that I'm feeling this, of course, right? And that's okay. And sometimes just the act of comforting yourself in that way is enough to make that better and to go away or to minimize it Or you can come up with a plan. Well, what do I need to do to make this better? Do I need to call a friend? Do I need to hire somebody? Do I need to get some help? Do I just need a hug? What is it that I need in this moment when I'm struggling? And that, that is how you get your own back. That's how you learn to never actually have anxiety ever again. When you have you to rely on and to get your own back and to say no to somebody when they're asking you to do something you don't want to do, or to put yourself first, or to cut off something that doesn't feel healthy for you, you are taking care of yourself in a way that now you know that you're going to be okay and you can have whatever it is that you want because you're there for you. Does that make sense?
That does, because usually we beat ourselves up so much more than anyone else does.
That's right. That's right. Your feelings are valid. There's usually a really good reason that you're having that experience.
So what about for people who feel like their partner is the problem? Like,
you're full of good questions. I love it.
And I'm thinking especially, so like my audience were mainly women who don't work in traditional employment for one reason or another. Either, we had to leave because of family, caregiving, whatever situations, got laid off in the recession, tried to start over, or just it wasn't flexible enough. For whatever reason, we've decided to leave this like mainstream of traditional employment and are kind of doing our own thing off on the side. Sometimes that's really hard for a spouse who doesn't really know what you're doing. Like to validate it, to support it, I see this in a lot of people in sort of private groups where we talk about it. And it's like, because I'm at home, I'm supposed to be doing all these other things. My work isn't valued. My time isn't valued. Like this. I love how you're talking about like, it's your reactions, your emotions, your responsibility for like, okay, I'm assuming you're going to say you can't change your spouse, you can change yourself. But that's kind of where I'm getting to is like, how do you approach that kind of thing when someone is like, no, it's my spouse is the problem. How they react is the problem.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to minimize the difficulty of having a spouse that has their own share of stuff that needs to be worked on. Mm-hmm. But as long as you're with this person, you can't point the finger and wait for somebody else to change so that you feel better. Mm-hmm. Right? You cannot, I'll say it again, you cannot wait for someone else to change or for them to do something so that you can feel the way you want to feel. So it's really on you. It just is always on us. So we have to rise up and hold ourselves accountable for being the best person that we can be. And that means have your inner temper tantrum about the way you don't like something, and then take a deep breath and pause, and then decide how you're going to approach somebody, your spouse, with your complaints or your disappointment or what you need so that you're going to actually get the result that you want. Approaching your partner in a regressed state when you're in the middle of like an emotional wave is going to cause a fight, and you're going to get dismissed. Whereas if you own your feelings and you give yourself that kind of, you let yourself ride that wave of emotion, and then you come down a little bit, and then you can approach with the idea that I want to be heard, or I want to be supported, or I don't want to have a fight. I just want him to understand where I'm coming from. You're going to choose your words better and approach the situation differently. Mm-hmm. And the other part of that is your spouse may not like what you're doing. They may not understand what you're doing. They may not care what you're doing. And that hurts because then you don't feel cared for. So that's actually what you want to be talking about. You can say something like, I know you don't really agree with what I'm doing, or you're not on board with what I'm doing. And the truth is that hurts me. It hurts that you're not interested in what I'm doing, or it hurts that you don't believe in what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm doing. I feel strongly about this. I know I can make this work. This is a passion of mine, and I want your support. But then you have to say, what does that support look like? That support looks like you asking me about how my day went, or being curious about what I'm up to during the day, or letting me share with you the ups and downs of this without judging me or without recrimination, or just financially supporting me while I'm taking this risk and doing something on my own. Like, what does that look like? What do you actually really need so that they can actually give it to you? Support looks different for all of us.
That's true. And, that just made me think of that whole love languages thing. I actually never read the original book, but I read the 5 Love Languages of Children because one of my daughters has autism. and she struggles with verbal communication. So I was trying to find some other ways to better understand what she needs. And it was so obvious when I read it that for her, it's touch. And I'm someone who struggles with touch. Like,
Mm.
you know, obviously I snuggled my babies, I nursed them. I love my kids, but falling asleep, she wants to clutch onto me. I cannot sleep with someone touching me. You know, just it was so interesting when I read through that and realized, okay, so in order for her to be able to sleep, I need to like fill up this need of physical contact for her before or like earlier in the day. And my other one, it's quality time.
Mhm.
So it's so interesting to watch the two kids. And once I read those descriptions and was like, oh my gosh, that one's Miffy and that one's Tallulah. And it's totally, for me, it's acts of service.
Yeah.
You know, so realizing here, I'm doing all these things for them that I think they should appreciate. They couldn't care less about laundry and food, you know, all the like the cute backpacks and the matching, you know, lunch boxes, all these things that I think are great. They just want time and touch.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's really hard when those aren't your things. But what I say, whether it's your children, I mean, it's a little bit different with your children because you're the grown up and you're the parent, but
Yeah.
with your spouses or even friends, you know, it's easy to give in the way that comes naturally. That's easy. So, you know, what my mother-in-law once said, you know, how it's not that big of a deal to give a donation when it's something that you didn't want, right? It's more of an impact when the giving actually hurts a little bit. And so it's the same kind of concept that it's easy to give love in the way that comes naturally for you. Keep doing that. But when you can identify the way that your partner wants to be loved, even if it's hard for you to do, especially if it's hard for you to do, giving in that way is actually a real act of love. Right? And so you may not want to fall asleep with your daughter on you, but you can let her fall asleep on her, on you, let her fall asleep on you, and then exit the room.
Yeah.
And that's you giving. And in that moment, you need to, again, like give yourself that acknowledgement that look at what I'm doing right now. I'm being the mom that I really want to be. And I'm doing something that's hard for me, that I don't want to be doing right now, that's uncomfortable for me. And I'm doing it for my child. Yay, me. Right? How many times do we do that with our kids? We do that all the time, but especially with a child that needs it extra, like extra special more than others, then even better for you that you can do that for her.
Yeah. I've been trying to set aside time aside in mornings and nights just to have like, I'm not trying to check my phone. I'm not trying to do it. Like, we'll just sit and we'll have a big, big snuggle. Cause that's like she's trying to get them all day long. She's like, having, you know, and I'm like, she just wants some serious snuggle time. Okay.
Well, and maybe there are other things you can do besides just snuggling. Like, can you, you know, when she's eating breakfast, can you walk up to her and just kind of rub her shoulders a little bit? Like, it's those little things. Even with couples, I'm telling people, you don't have to go on romantic date nights all the time or on fancy getaways. You got to steal away those connection points in the day-to-day. So as you're walking by one another, give a little squeeze, you know, where it counts. Or, you know, when you're watching TV, put your hand on on each other's knee, or, you know, just find those moments it's not that hard to do when we're thinking about it that way. And that's really how we strengthen our relationships.
Yeah. I've not had a date night in a while.
It's hard. You got to just put it on the calendar and get the sitter and have it be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are all some really great tips. What other kinds of things do you work on with people?
Well, I mean, mostly I work on relationship issues with people, but you know, we all bring our own stuff into the relationship. So, you know, we have our own insecurities and our own baggage and our own anxieties about things. And I love helping people with all of that so that they can really be their best self. So I have two women's programs. One is called Hot, Healthy, Happy. And that is really all about the relationship with you and feeling confident and empowered and how you're showing up in your life and in your relationships. But then I have Hot, Healthy, Happily Ever After, which is the program that's mostly designed to teach relationship skills and communication and how to build trust and boundaries and to really keep your sex life exciting when you've been together for a long time. So those are the two groups that I run. I don't run them all the time. I run them probably twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
So
Is the happily ever after, are they for women or are they mixed? Do you bring your spouse?
they're mostly for women, but sometimes the women that join will have their partner kind of come along for the ride, and I'm fine with that. I love helping men too. We're all in this together, but I just really like for women to feel safe sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's primarily women, but I don't ever exclude anybody so long as the men are totally appropriate and and are supportive and can handle the conversation that we're having. So
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. That sounds great. Okay. So, well, thank you so much for joining me here. It was really great to dive into some of this stuff and get some great tips. So,
thank you, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. It was really
and,
fun.
okay, great. We will direct the reader, the listeners, the watchers to your links in the show notes. So everyone go check that out, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.